Give me 1 second. I'm gonna.
Okay.
All right, we are recording now. I am Josh Bass, president of the Currituck Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce is a nonpartisan business membership organization, and we neither support nor oppose any candidate or political party. We are doing this Zoom today in an effort to inform our members and the public about the upcoming races this November. This Zoom will be recorded and shared on social media after this meeting. Both candidates for House District 6 have been invited, and Mr. Tommy Fulcher, candidate for House District 6, the Democratic candidate, has accepted our invitation today. We thank him. And if anyone has a question, we will be accepting those questions via private chat message. And I'm going to take my video off so we can focus on the candidate, Mr. Fulcher. And Mr. Fulcher, thank you for being here with us today. And if you would, please introduce yourself to the voters on this video.
Thank you, Josh. I'm Tommy Fulcher, running for House District 6. I live in Dare County. And I want to start by saying I really appreciate the opportunity presented to me and my opponent to participate in this Zoom video forum. I think it's important for voters to understand that the key to a healthy democracy is the free exchange of ideas, sharing those ideas with voters and letting them assess the candidates and their views before they make their decisions. As Josh mentioned, I am running in House District 6, which includes Pamlico, Dare, Hyde, and Currituck counties. And again, I appreciate those in on the call today, and I'm very thankful for this interview.
All right, Mr. Fulcher, our first question, if you wrote the state budget yourself, what would you add in the state budget, or what would you take out of the state budget?
Okay, let me start first by explaining how the budget process works now. What you have in Raleigh with the majority party in control is budget decisions, key legislative decisions are made by just a handful of legislators in the dark of night, in out of public view, and with little involvement from the minority party, and not to mention the public. When they emerge from their closed door meetings, they announce what the budget is, give both sides very little time to read what's in it, and then face a vote on it. That is not how it should work, but that's what we have now. In terms of answering the question, what I think is the most important thing for the upcoming General Assembly in 2021 is still addressing the fallout from the coronavirus and its impact on our economy. What we need to do is put more money in the hands of the public, and that can be done by tax relief to working North Carolinians, as well as improving the unemployment compensation for those out of work. I know the General Assembly made a small increase in the weekly compensation recently, which they should be commended for, but it's not nearly enough. And I want to remind voters too that we have one of the skimpiest unemployment compensation systems in the country, because you're limited to 12 weeks. And this pandemic has impacted thousands and thousands of North Carolina workers, and it's not near enough. I would definitely have Medicaid expansion in the budget as well, because Thousands of North Carolinians are out of work because of the coronavirus. And when they lost their jobs, they ultimately lost their insurance and don't have a whole lot of things to fall back on. Medicaid expansion would cover literally hundreds of thousands of North Carolina citizens. And most of those are struggling on the margins, really working hard. Another thing that I would do is teacher raises and also put more money in public infrastructure, especially our public schools. But what would be de-emphasized is rolling back the tax cuts that went to major corporations and the wealthy. Those would be key, and concentrate the tax cuts on small business and working North Carolinians.
So, Mr. Fulcher, that actually is a good lead in, and you covered some of this in your first answer to the second question. But the second question we have is the governor has pushed for Medicare expansion, and you've already voiced, of course, your support for that. But maybe explain as to why you as a candidate believe Medicare expansion is important statewide.
Okay, I sure will, and thank you for the question. And it's Medicaid expansion, Josh. I think you said Medicare, but
I apologize for that. I did.
Okay, it's easy to get those terms mixed up. But Medicaid expansion, here's what it would do. It would do several things. First, the federal money is already there and has been there for years. We're talking billions of dollars that this General Assembly, the legislative leadership, has refused to take, whereas many Republican states with Republican legislatures and governors across the country have done the opposite. I mean, North Carolina is one of the few outlier states in the nation that still refuses to expand Medicaid. We're one of like 12 states. And really, the other side, it can't really articulate why they're against Medicaid expansion. They don't really give any reasons why. All we know is they're against it for ideological reasons. But what it would do, as I mentioned in my first answer, it would cover hundreds of thousands of people that lack health care now. It would provide preventive health care to so many struggling on the margins, which actually would make them more productive workers if they did have health care. And also it would take in many that have lost their jobs because of the coronavirus, because of their private insurance went away when they lost their jobs. Now, another thing it would do as well, and this is big, especially for rural North Carolina, is it would be a huge economic driver because it would create many good paying jobs in the health profession. It would inject money into the economy. And that's exactly what we need, especially in rural North Carolina. So absolutely, I want to expand Medicaid. We'll support that. The governor has been pushing that. The other side is not even willing to talk about it. And that's another question you could take in another direction, the dysfunction in the General Assembly. But it's Medicaid expansion is not going to happen unless we change the legislature. And if I get elected, I will help do that.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Next question we have, and you had spoken again some in your first answer about your priorities for public education, but specifically if elected, what would your top priorities for public education be? And these could be financial or non-financial. What would your top priorities for education in the state be?
Okay, thank you for that question, Josh. Public education, let me give a little background here first, and I'll get to my answer. Since the majority party took control of the legislature after the 2010 elections, we have seen a constant drumbeat of defunding of public education. We've seen the teaching profession attacked by leadership in the General Assembly. We have seen the public's confidence get eroded in our public schools because of this piecemeal picking apart of public education. Because the real agenda here is to privatize education. And I am vehemently opposed to that. So my priorities for public education first would be a statewide bond issue to put before the voters, because many of our public schools, especially in rural areas, are struggling for infrastructure needs. And that is because they don't have the tax base or the resources to modernize their schools. And what the bond issue would do, it would help bring our rural schools up to par with what they have in the urban areas, who are much more affluent counties and can put much more money for the best resources into their schools. Another big priority of mine would be to end private school vouchers. That's another backdoor way of undermining public education. I have no problem with school choice and people sending their kids to where they want to send them to school. But the difference is, I don't believe that the public should be paying for private school education. If somebody wants to do that on their own, that's fine, but there's limited to no oversight of how that money is used, and it's just the wrong thing to do. I will work to end that. Another thing we need to do is cap the expansion of for-profit public schools. That's another chilling trend that I will work to stop, because that's another route that the majority party is taking to undermine confidence in our public schools. And I did mention a little bit about the teacher raises. We need to bring our teachers up to the national average. I know we cannot do that in pay overnight, but we need to get there quicker than the rate we're going, and I will work to help make that happen.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Our last and final question, and again, it's something you touched on in your introduction and several times, and this does go to the coronavirus. And I think you had mentioned about people being out of work in the state that were affected by the coronavirus. But of course, we as the chamber understand the business side of that, and that many of the people are out of work because the business they work for is suffering. So again, if elected, what would you do in the state legislature to address businesses specifically that are struggling financially through the coronavirus and having a hard time retaining these employees?
Thank you for that question. That is a good one, because I know small business, when you look at the economic fallout from the coronavirus, small business across North Carolina, well, actually across the nation, have suffered more than, they've taken it on the chin. They really have. A lot of small businesses operate on tight margins anyway. But the coronavirus has really hurt their business. Many have closed. And look, I know that for our small businesses to recover, our economy to recover, what it's going to take is getting control of the pandemic first. Because just going out saying we need to open up, and I wish we could, and we could do that, but that wouldn't last long, because the virus is still lethal. It is easily spread, and that would maybe cause a short uptick in business, but then it would fall completely off because we'd see a rise in cases. So small businesses, I want to see brought back with tax relief, tax credits, grants, loans, whatever it will take to keep them afloat. And that's something we need to invest in, because so many jobs are dependent on small business, but they are not going to be able to recover without us getting control of the virus first. And look, I know it's been tough. The governor's made really hard decisions that have had dreadful consequences for workers and small business. But I think the approach of slowly bringing back the economy, because we have to have the public have confidence that they can get out and be protected. So that's what we have to do. But to be sure, small business has really suffered greatly, and I will do my best, if elected, to reverse these tax cuts that have been concentrated with corporations and steer that money to small business where it should have been to start with.
Thank you, Mr. Fulcher. That's it for our questions. There is time for a closing statement if there's anything you would like to say or anything you'd like to speak to that we haven't had a chance to cover.
Well, thank you. I'll say in closing that, we are not going to really see a real change in North Carolina until we change the General Assembly and especially the leadership. And here's why. Because we will get the best legislation, the most moderate legislation, when both sides actually have to talk to each other and work out compromise. But for some reason, compromise is now looked at as weakness or abandoning your principles, which is, that's a fairy tale. The General Assembly needs to be where both sides have input and both sides have to give up something to get what they want. And here's why. That's how life really is. Nobody gets everything they want. They get some of what they want. And we're going to get the best legislation when both sides have to talk to each other and give up something and be able to walk away and said they got some of what they wanted, but not everything. Because when we have that, that's where most voters are. This extreme legislation, that's party line vote, that's going to continue if we don't change the General Assembly. So I hope you will consider that. And I ask you for that consideration, and I ask for your vote, because I will work for you in the General Assembly, not the party bosses and the corporate bosses there in Raleigh. I'll work for this district. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you again. This is Tommy Fulcher, Democratic candidate for House District 6. Thank you for being with us today, and we will be posting this on social media. Thank you again.
Thank you.